Princess Zara watched the human from behind the purple crystal formations that jutted from her planet's surface like giant fingers reaching toward the twin moons above. The strange pale creature sat cross-legged in the center of the forbidden valley where her people never dared to venture, and in his cupped hands was something that made her blood run cold, a baby Vorthak. The tiny creature was no bigger than her thumb, with scales that shimmered black and silver in the moonlight and eyes that glowed like tiny red stars. But Zara knew what this harmless-looking thing would become. Every child on Kepler Prime learned the stories of the great Vorthaks that once ruled their world, before the ancient wars drove them to extinction, or so they thought. These creatures started small and innocent, but as they grew, they became living nightmares with razor-sharp claws that could slice through the strongest metals and teeth that could crush solid stone. Their roar alone could shatter mountains, and when fully grown, they stood as tall as the great temples in her father's capital city. Yet here was this human, gently stroking the baby creature's head, while making soft, cooing sounds like he was caring for a pet. Zara had been tracking this human for 3 days, ever since her scouts reported a crashed ship in the outer territories. Her father, King Darius, had ordered her to investigate and determine if this alien posed a threat to their kingdom. She expected to find a warrior, or perhaps a traitor, but instead she discovered something far more dangerous, a fool who didn't understand what he was playing with. The human stood up slowly, and Zara could see he was tall even by her people's standards, with short brown hair and kind eyes that seemed to hold no malice. He wore simple clothes that looked worn from travel and carried no visible weapons, but in his hands he cradled potential destruction. She watched as he walked to a small shelter he had built from salvaged ship parts and disappeared inside. Zara knew she should return to her father immediately and report what she had seen. The council would demand action, and within hours a full military force would surround this valley. The human would be captured or killed, and the baby Vorthak would be destroyed before it could grow into the monster it was destined to become. It was the logical choice, the safe choice, the choice any responsible princess would make. But something held her back. Maybe it was the gentle way the human had touched the creature, or the fact that he seemed completely unaware of the danger he was in. Her people had stories about humans, too. They were said to be fierce warriors who conquered entire star systems and bent alien races to their will. Yet this one seemed different, almost peaceful. Over the next several days, Zara found herself returning to watch the strange pair. The human had named the baby Vorthak Spike and treated it like a beloved companion. He fed it small pieces of fruit and meat from his dwindling supplies and talked to it constantly in his alien language. The creature seemed to respond to his voice, growing visibly excited whenever the human approached. Zara noticed that Spike was already growing, larger each day, adding inches to its length and developing small bumps where its wings would eventually sprout. Soon it would be too big to carry, and then the real danger would begin. On the 7th day of her surveillance, Zara made a decision that would change everything. Instead of watching from hiding, she stepped into the clearing where the human sat, with Spike curled in his lap like a sleeping cat. The human looked up at her with surprise but no fear, which only confirmed her growing suspicion that he truly didn't understand his situation. She spoke in the universal trade language that most space travelers knew, and was relieved when he responded in kind, though with a heavy accent. His name was Jake Morrison, and he was a xenobiologist from Earth who had been studying extinct species when his ship crashed. He had found Spike's egg in the ruins of an ancient temple and managed to hatch it using equipment from his damaged laboratory. When Zara tried to explain what Spike would become, Jake just smiled and shook his head. He insisted that environment and upbringing shaped behavior more than genetics, and that with proper care, Spike would remain gentle. Zara wanted to believe him, but she had seen the ancient murals depicting the Vorthak Wars, entire cities reduced to rubble, mountains carved hollow by their claws, forests burned to ash by their breath. No amount of human optimism could change what Spike was. As if summoned by her dark thoughts, Spike opened its red eyes and looked directly at her. For a moment she felt a chill of pure terror as those alien eyes seemed to peer into her soul. But then the creature made a soft chirping sound and nuzzled against Jake's chest like an affectionate pet. Over the following weeks, Zara found herself drawn back to the valley again and again. She told herself she was gathering intelligence for her father, but the truth was more complicated. She was fascinated by Jake's unwavering faith in his dangerous companion and by the bond that seemed to grow stronger between them each day. Spike continued to grow rapidly and was now the size of a large dog, with wings that could carry at short distances. Its scales had darkened to deep black with silver edges that caught the light like polished metal. Sometimes Zara caught glimpses of the predator Spike would become in the way it moved, or the calculating look in its eyes. But then Jake would speak to it in gentle tones and the creature would become docile again. The crisis came when Spike reached adolescence one morning. Zara arrived to find Jake's camp destroyed and the human nowhere to be seen. Spike sat in the center of the wreckage, easily twice the size it had been just days before. Its eyes now glowed with fierce intelligence, and when it saw Zara, it let out a low rumble that made her bones ache. She was about to flee when she heard Jake's voice calling from somewhere beyond the rocky outcropping. Following the sound, she found him trapped in a narrow crevice, his leg badly injured. He had fallen while trying to retrieve fruit from a high ledge and had been stuck for hours. Spike had stayed nearby, making worried sounds but growing increasingly agitated. As Zara helped pull Jake from the crevice, she realized that Spike's destructive rampage hadn't been random violence. The creature had been trying to dig its human companion out methodically, tearing apart anything that might be hiding him. When Jake emerged, Spike immediately calmed down and gently nuzzled his injured leg with surprising tenderness. This moment changed everything for Zara. She began to see that Jake might be right about environment shaping behavior under human care. Spike was developing not as a mindless destroyer, but as a protective guardian. The creature was certainly dangerous, but its loyalty seemed absolute. Still, she knew her father's patience was running out. The king's scouts had reported strange roars coming from the Forbidden Valley and pressure was mounting for military action. Zara faced an impossible choice. She could betray Jake's location and watch as her people killed both him and Spike in the name of safety. Or she could help them escape, knowing that someday Spike might grow beyond even Jake's control. The decision was made for her when royal guards followed her trail to the valley. King Darius himself led the force, having grown suspicious of his daughter's long absences. When they surrounded Jake's camp, Spike immediately moved to defend his human companion. The creature had grown to nearly adult size with a wingspan that blocked out the twin moons. Its roar shook the ground and sent several guards stumbling backward in terror, but Jake stepped between Spike and the soldier, speaking firmly to his companion. To everyone's amazement, the massive predator obeyed, sitting back on its haunches, though its eyes never stopped tracking potential threats. King Darius stared in shock as Jake calmly explained his research and introduced Spike as his partner, not his weapon. The creature allowed the king to approach and even accepted a cautious pat on its armored head. For the first time in recorded history, a Vorthak had shown submission to another being. Zara watched her father struggle with this revelation. Everything they believed about these creatures had been built on ancient fears and half-remembered legends. Perhaps the Vorthaks of old had been driven to violence by persecution and misunderstanding. Perhaps, with different treatment, they could have been allies instead of enemies. In the end, King Darius made an unprecedented decision. He offered Jake sanctuary in the kingdom and appointed him as royal xenobiologist. Spike would be allowed to live, but under careful observation and with strict protocols to ensure public safety. As they traveled back to the capital, Zara walked beside Jake and his massive companion. Spike had grown protective of her too after she helped rescue Jake and now considered her part of his pack. She realized that her choice to help them escape had never been necessary. Jake's unwavering belief in Spike's potential for good had been vindicated. The human had indeed raised a terrifying predator, but also a loyal friend. Princess Zara smiled as she watched Jake scratch behind Spike's armored ears while the creature purred like a giant cat. Sometimes the greatest courage came not from fighting monsters but from choosing to see the beauty hidden within them. The Forbidden Valley fell silent behind them, but ahead lay possibilities that none of them had dared to imagine. In the distance, the twin moons cast silver light on the path home, where a human, a princess, and their unlikely guardian would write a new chapter in the history of two species learning to trust.